In the world of accounting, there is massive number of career opportunities. The salary ranges are wide. The career aspects are incredibly vast. And I think because of that, it's important to understand what exactly exists. We hear acronyms all the time, CPA versus CMA. And for the rest of us that aren't in the world of accounting, we have no idea what these things mean. So today, what I've done is I brought in Dr. Moore. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what is exactly the CPA versus the CMA. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into each one. We're going to talk about some career opportunities, some salary ranges, some education requirements. And then we're going to talk about why Walsh is the place to get these degrees and get yourself lined up to become the next CPA and the next CMA and what that looks like. So what I'm going to have you do is first introduce yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about your background, what brought you to Walsh, and then we'll dive in. So
okay, well, good to meet with you, Jay. My background, my name's John Moore. I'm the chair of the accounting and finance departments here at Walsh College. And my career actually started out becoming a CPA, coming out of my undergraduate studies many moons ago, back in the days of adding machines and pencils and erasers. But so my own career path eventually led to being a chief financial officer out in industry. And in a mid-career event, I went back and had a crazy idea of getting a doctorate. So I have my doctorate, and now I teach what I know, and actually also what I've learned over the last several decades being out there working in the real world.
Yeah, and you're still doing a little bit in the real world.
I do consult on the side. My specialty area is commercial real estate, and I do consult in
nice.
Space.
Nice. So how long have you been in the accounting industry now?
45 years.
Man. So you've seen some drastic changes take place in that industry.
I wasn't kidding you when I did pencil and paper. The very first, so to put this in perspective, the very first time I ever turned on a personal computer to work was about 6 years into my career. So certainly public accounting has changed since then. You were talking about CPAs and CMAs. The world has become far more dynamic. And actually, one of the things that I like about the world now is back then you spent an awful lot of your time doing very mundane, very detailed work. And one of the wonderful things that's happened because of technology since then is that these type of roles are far less what I'll call small work because there was nobody to help you. And now, a big part of these career paths are being more analytical and more decision making. And it's still important to understand the theory, but you don't spend as much time, cranking a number.
Right.
Technology does that for you now, which I think if I could start all over again today, it's been fun so far. It'd be even more fun if I were to start today.
Well, and I think we're starting to see that a lot in a lot of different categories of business and technology. We had somebody in here last week. We were talking about IT and cybersecurity and things like that, and we were talking about the speed at which people are able to take action and complete tasks now is astronomically faster than it was even 5 years ago.
Yes.
And if you go back even further than that, the speed is just increasing. Exponentially. So I would imagine that, as you said, it used to be a lot more pen and paper and you're really trying to figure those things out. Now you don't have to do that. So you can spend the time being analytical. And beyond that, the numbers are there for you and you have the ability to track things down much easier than you ever did in the past. And so talk to me a little bit about, before we dive into specifically CPA, CMA, talk to me a little bit about what is happening in the accounting industry as a whole that is maybe happening today that wasn't happening 10 years ago. And what are people being set up for now in the best ways?
Well, it's interesting for those who are, what shall I say, business and quantitatively inclined. It's a very interesting career path right now. One of the things that's happened over the last couple of years is there's actually become a shortage of highly qualified accountants and finance people. And
why do you think that is?
I think there's a perception that it's a boring, dull type of industry, and I think I'll share with you. I think that couldn't be further from the truth, because again, you have an opportunity in this field to be part of making decisions for a business enterprise, and business in general makes the world a better place.
Absolutely.
We talked about technology and all that progress. That's all on the back of business. Entrepreneurs, people who are looking for cutting edge products and services for customers, that all runs through business. And that's what makes business such an exciting career. But I think that, I think frankly, the profession hasn't done a good job of selling itself. And we're obviously going through changes in curriculum here at Walsh so that we can prepare students to be part of what I think is it's certainly been a tremendously rewarding career for me.
I'm sure. Well, and it also helps to have somebody like yourself who has the industry experience to know, like, look, this is an exciting time. I've been here when maybe it wasn't as exciting as it is today. And let me tell you, it's changing. And it's nice to have somebody like yourself in that seat to not only bring in that industry experience, but bring in the things that are beyond the textbook and let our students understand what it really is in the real world.
Well, and I would argue that my pathway is prototypical of all the faculty here at Walsh College. We bring in technical knowledge, but we all have a good arsenal of war stories because the real world never works the way the textbook says, ever.
Never.
So I know whenever I'm in the classroom, we'll go over a typical topic in a given night, and I always dedicate some period of time for saying, okay, what could possibly go wrong? And it usually ends up being an extended discussion.
I'm sure. But those are the things that are going to prepare students.
Absolutely. And that's actually what makes the field in general, I think, an exciting opportunity. There's a couple things. There's a steady career path. You can have all the technology in the world. You're never going to run out of the need for accounting and finance talent out there. So I would argue it's a very solid career path from that standpoint. But I also think that, if somebody's looking for something rewarding, making a difference in the world, especially the way technology has evolved in the field, anybody who's gotten a certain amount of experiences in a managerial role in the corporate world, you're going to be at the table making decisions that really are important. And that to me is a very fulfilling part of your professional career. You're going to work thousands of hours over a career lifetime. Do you want to just be cranking something on a spreadsheet or pressing a button, or do you actually want to be part of that decision process that makes the wheels of commerce work?
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put that, because we talk a lot of times about how our students are we feel at least are better prepared than the average student, because they're coming in and they're having this real world application on a regular basis. So we don't even really, we lean into what is the hands-on thing that you need to know when you go into your job, not what is the theory behind the thing. Sure, we'll touch on that. We'll talk about why it exists, but that is not where the majority of the time is spent, because to your point, that's not what's happening when you get into your career.
Absolutely not. And here's the key thing in this industry in particular. If you're good at it, it's really about problem solving. Forever and a day in the world of accounting and finance, there are obstacles and challenges. People who are really good at it are the folks that can say, okay, here's a challenge, here's a problem, how do we fix it? And then put together and this involves a lot of technical knowledge, but also a lot of critical thinking and a lot of people skills. So all those things that people don't think are part of accounting, critical thinking, people skills, that's actually a big part of the job.
Yeah, well, and beyond that, it's not even just specific to accounting. Once you have those skills, you can take them to do everything you want. You can have the critical thinking and all those pieces. You can take and do anything you want in any career.
I am testimony to that, because I came out of school with an accounting degree, passed my CPA exam. I'm a professor today. In the middle of all that, I was involved in finance. So, I've been across the negotiating table with venture capital money from Wall Street. I've negotiated with banks and financial institutions in my own career. Real estate's obviously my core of the world, but I've been the person first in line in charge of probably $500 million of real estate acquisitions, divestitures, probably close to $1 billion of financings. To me, my accounting background is where that all started. Mm-hmm. And we all pick our different pathways as to where we take the career, but I could not have enjoyed the fun of that career without starting in an accounting program, learning how to debit and credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's also one of those careers that also can impact your personal life. And you go, okay, this is great. Now here's my work things. And now after work, now I also have to deal with my own personal things. And if I know how to do this the right way,
absolutely,
you can set yourself up for success for the future too.
Absolutely. Financial literacy is important to anybody's well-being long-term. And then I happen to be married to a CPA as well. So we talk about that a lot. It's a very good background to work out your own personal goals, and my wife and I happen to have a second home that we built. Well, that's all built on a fulfilling career path and
understanding finance and accounting.
Absolutely.
So let's go in a little bit into the different ones, because one of the things that I have found fascinating over the time of talking to yourself and other accounting professionals is there's two very different pathways that for the people like me, the general public, we go, no, those are the same thing, but they're very much not. And so let's start with CPA, and then we'll move into CMA. So tell me a little bit about what is a CPA?
Okay, a CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. The various states in the United States all have their own different accrediting bodies, but it's a single exam that's across the country. And what the CPA does is it establishes credibility to your expertise in accounting. It's a very challenging exam. I'll be the first to admit I didn't pass it the first time. I got it in the second time.
So we had one of our alumni. One of our alumni was in here last week, and he made the comment, and now I've heard it 3 times since then, which is always the funny part. And he said, CPA stands for can't pass again. And I've heard multiple people say, like, this is a very, very difficult exam.
It is. Although it's interesting, I've always heard CPA being cut, paste, and attached. So I like your definition better than mine. But in addition to passing the exam, you have to have a certain amount of experience, and it really creates credibility. So one thing that comes of it is you're technically skilled, but at least in my own experience, you have that CPA certification. There's a lot of doors that open up for you in terms of career path, and I think one thing to maybe distinguish, Jay, is the worlds of accounting and finance, because I've my own career has touched both. They're almost like first cousin disciplines. And in fact, like in finance, to do finance well, you need to know accounting. To know accounting, you actually have to know a little bit about finance, and so there are two specific disciplines, and obviously our focus today is on accounting, but finance does play its way in. We'll talk about that with the CMA. But a CPA has technical knowledge in terms of the preparation, the understanding of, the ability to analyze financial statements. So your expertise, and if you're in a public accounting firm coming out of school, most of your work would be in the area of assurance services, where you actually go to clients, take a look at financial statements. In my own career, I was on the Ford Motor Company audit. Okay. And that'd be a month and a half out of every year, just sitting in our workroom at Ford World headquarters, and going over to make sure that Ford was stating their financial statements in accordance with accounting principles. And think about, from my own background, think about the importance of that knowledge, because you have this investor world out there that's looking for financial results. So who cares about financial statements? Well, if you want to go to a bank, the bank cares about the financial statements. If you're a publicly traded company, all the shareholders and all the analysts are out there want to know about it. If you're internal, in terms of handing out bonuses to people or figuring out where your company is coming and going, you need to have those financial statements present the world as it is. And in order to do it consistently and appropriately, you have to have technical expertise. It's hard in the context of a conversation to talk about the mundane parts of accounting. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you're a CPA, you have the ability to parse financial information and give all these stakeholders, internal financial sources, investors, comfort that the information that they're looking at. And then beyond that, you have the ability to then analyze and say, well, how does that project forward?
Right.
What kind of business decisions can we make based on what we know?
Right. So let's go a little bit further on that, because I think that's the thing that becomes the most fascinating. And again, this goes back to the earlier part of the conversation where we say, the data is more accessible now than it maybe ever has been in the past. And we can do a lot more with it because for, technology and even AI, I'm sure at this point is coming into play on reading that data and those kind of pieces. So let's go a little bit more into the forecasting side of things. So if you're as a CPA and you're looking into you're in charge of all the accounting for, let's say, Ford, right? Or doing that audit. What does that look like on the forecasting side? Because that seems to me like magic, because it is, you are somebody who can look at numbers, you can read them so well that you go, here's what 5 years from now looks like. And you can do that with pretty good confidence.
Well, I wish it were that easy, but this is where I think the expertise comes in handy. The technical expertise is, you can straight line things out. So you can take a set of financials. Let's say you and I are looking at a company XYZ. We look at 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. We can create all sorts of trend analysis. But will it go on a straight line? The answer is no, because the technology changed. So if you dig down into those numbers, okay, if revenues are up, what's behind that trend? So a big part of accounting is analyzing what's causing this data to change. So, in a company that has multiple product lines, well, which ones are starting to perhaps get a little bit stale? Perhaps there's new technology, new competition. Where are we starting to experience some breakout, which represents an opportunity? Also, think about analyzing your competitors' financial statements and exactly how they are approaching things. Are there some competitors that are doing best practices better than you? Are there certain areas where you're doing better? So now all of a sudden, as opposed to cranking out data in a green eye shade environment like we've been taught, now all of a sudden you're taking a look at all these data points, and you're trying to make some sense in a dynamic environment where there's no business out there that has a monopoly. We're always in competition with other places. So how can we improve our performance? How do we stack up relative to our competition? These are all the roles and opportunities that accountants have. Nobody else in the organization has the ability to do that or have been trained to do it as well as accountants. And that's where the job becomes a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, and you have to have an understanding of everybody else's role, because because to your point, you have to know in the production line, this thing is picking up, but you have to know not only that it is picking up, but why is it picking up?
So I'll give you a war story. Going into the construction business, this is the type of stuff we talking about in the classroom. So I used to work a lot in construction. That ties into real estate. And I worked for a construction company where you end up having these projects that take a long period of time. So when you're closing let's say you have a year-long job and you're closing your books every 3 months, every quarter, and you're starting to recognize profits and revenues. Well, it's all based on estimates. Well, am I 25% done with the job right now? And in that case, this is where it becomes a people business. You have to go talk to the construction folks, the construction manager who's actually running that job, and say, okay, you drive out to the job, you see how things are going, you talk to the construction manager. What I found out when I got into that industry was some of those construction managers were overly optimistic, and some of them were sandbaggers. And so you talk about people business, you have to, and these are intangibles. This is not adding 2 + 2 to get to 4. Okay, I have, I'm estimating my revenues expenses based on percentage of completion. All of that is based upon site observation as to what's happening. And I'm an accountant, so I don't always know how far the electrical or the plumbing's gotten on a construction job. But you have to understand patterns and the sources of information in order to give all your stakeholders good information. That goes well beyond just a running an ad machine or a spreadsheet skill. And again, those are the things that I think make the career profession just fascinating.
Yeah. But again, you have to understand everybody else's business.
Absolutely.
That's a really interesting way to look at it is the understanding, the vast understanding that has to take place even beyond the numbers.
Absolutely.
Because you have to not only be able to understand everybody else's business, you have to intake their numbers, then you have to be able to put those numbers back out in a way that everybody else understands. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think that accounting does kind of get a bad rep for being this perception of something that it's not. There is so much more to it than just adding up numbers. So let's shift gears a little bit now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about CMA. So now we talked about the CPA. We know a little bit about what that is. What is a CMA and what makes that different than a CPA?
Okay, so CPA, as we talked about, is very strictly accounting focused financial statements. CMA is this interesting hybrid. There's two parts to the exam. One part is accounting focused, but interestingly enough, on a cost accounting basis as opposed to financial basis. So the difference between the CMA and CPA is looking at financial statements. How do we arrange them properly? How do we disclose the information properly? CMA is a little bit more analytical in the sense of, okay, do we buy this big piece of equipment to automate, be more efficient in producing a certain product, or in some cases some services that we provide. So it's internal based, and that's one part of the CMA exam. The other is actually tied to finance. So this is why it's a hybrid type of credential. And the finance part is, what's our cost of capital? How much is it going to cost to make this, bring this machine in? So CMA and CPA, interestingly enough, don't overlap a whole lot with each other, which I would argue, is what makes somebody who's a CPA and a CMA a little bit more powerful.
Interesting. It is interesting because, again, from the outsider perspective, those two things almost sound very similar. they
do.
So why do you see that those two things sit in different worlds in the way of a business, how a business operates?
Well, because they attack two different parts of business problems for businesses. Again, you're looking at the outside world. That's the CPA route. Mm-hmm. Internal decision making is that CMA route, and I guess you could create an exam that encompasses all of it, but that would be an awful lot of territory to cover. which again, though, speaks to accounting is not that dull. It's not like it's not the same, doing the same repetitive task every day. The number of business decisions and the amount of people to get impacted by all this world of accounting is pretty broad. And that's why you have two different designations to cover two different skill sets.
Interesting. It's absolutely fascinating. So you touched a little bit about the educational requirements of each. Tell me specifically, if you're a CPA, what is your degree requirement as a CPA?
So as a CPA, at some point in time before you become a CPA, you have to have 150 total credit hours of education, and that's something that has changed since back in the Stone Age when I got it. It was like 126 hours or something like that. But so you have to have a formal education. There's a certain number of specific accounting classes that you have to take as a prerequisite, and as I said before, you have to have some work experience before you can actually become a certified public accountant. Okay.
So you actually have to have some real experience beyond even just your college degree.
Correct. It's not a credential that you could be in your last year of college, take the exam, and then automatically become a CPA.
Interesting. So how much work experience do you have to have?
They've modified the rules. Back in my day, it was 2 years of work experience.
Oh, so it's not even just like it's not even like, oh, you just go and get a job and then you say you have a job.
No. What has changed is you don't necessarily have to be in public accounting. That's the biggest change that has happened since then. So you have 2 years of work experience that covers responsibilities and duties that are tied to the public accounting aspect of accounting. But as I said before, the CPA exam, so you evidence yourself in terms of technical skills, but you also have to evidence that you have some job experience. But again, you have that CPA attached to your name, it will open up doors.
Yeah,
it gathers instant respect in the business world.
Interesting. So now on the CMA side, what does that look like from a degree standpoint?
From a degree standpoint, a little bit easier.
Okay.
If you have a degree, a business degree, and you pass the exam, you can be a CMA. So from that standpoint, it's not quite as demanding in terms of checking all the boxes. But I would argue, nonetheless, it's another one of those credentials that will gain you instant respect in a business boardroom.
Yeah. And what's when you look at the two exams, CPA exam, CMA exam, Yeah. What's the comparison?
Well, they're both challenging, but,
Okay.
but the CPA is generally held out as the gold standard credential. It's a very challenging exam.
Okay. Okay. So moving on beyond that now, let's go into what does the career opportunities look like? So we're a CPA, we've now passed the exam. What does that career opportunity look like from there?
Okay, well, I can certainly speak from my own experience. So I worked for between 4 and 5 years out in public accounting. At the time it was Coopers and Lybrand, it's now PricewaterhouseCoopers. But that was an outstanding work education on top of the degree. And one of the wonderful things about that career was the fact that it was almost like a graduate degree in a sense. You earned a salary, which was good, paid those bills, but you would move from job to job. So you'd be switching locality of and client, basically about every month and a half. So what you were doing is you were getting to see a lot of different modes of business and getting snapshots. So over the course of 4 years, my responsibilities moved up from introductory to supervisory. I think in my 4th year, I was running, this is something about the world of public accounting and CPAs. At the time, I was, 25 years old, and I was running the first ever public accounting audit of Macomb County. And I think I had 25 to 30 people working for me at 4 different locations in Macomb County over the course of a summer. Again, if you're looking for job responsibilities, for fast tracking, showing off what you can and can't do, public accounting is a great opportunity for that. It certainly worked for me. So what happened after that is I went into private sector, and my start in real estate was actually with the Taubman Company. I was an assistant controller there, and then worked my way up to a controller, and eventually worked for the largest industrial commercial real estate development company in Michigan as their CFO at age 31. So I'm sure my story isn't the same as everybody else's story. I know people who've done far bigger and more important roles than I have, but what I will say is public accounting was a tremendous window through which to get a good career path going.
Yeah.
And I was able to enjoy a lot of responsibilities at an early age in my career, and my CPA and work starting in public accounting was the reason why I could enjoy that early in my career.
Interesting. So now let's look at the CMA. Mm-hmm. So what's career opportunities look like in the CMA side?
The CMA tends to be more prized in the private sector. So it'll be large, both product and service companies. So, especially here in the Michigan area, you see the automotive industry, you see a lot of the tier 1, 2, 3 suppliers are big in it. You'll see service companies now increasingly need to have the services of a certified managerial accountant, because again, you're trying to understand you have these resources at these very large companies. Do you have too many resources? Do you have too few resources? That's part of the decision roles that the CMAs are integrally tied into, and so it's a huge part of the decision process in these large companies.
So it sounds like a CMA is working very closely with all the different teams within a larger organization.
Oh, absolutely.
And really doing a deep dive into necessity versus, resources.
But again, a lot of the same attributes. So think about it from this standpoint. They have to be going out to the different disciplines within a company: the engineering folks, the sales folks, the product development folks, the back office. They have to interface with a number of different areas of the company. They have to be able to synthesize all this information coming from disparate sources and try to make sense out of it, and then report it up to management and make recommendations. The great thing about the CMA is basically everybody's staring at a CMA saying, okay, here's the data. What's your recommendation? And so you see in the ranks of corporate America, CFOs, chief accounting officers, treasurers, a very good chunk of these people have either a CPA or CMA attached to their names.
So, all right. So I'm gonna ask you one more question on this because it is becoming very fascinating to me to think about what that looks like to talk to as a CPA or as a CMA, either way, and you have all the information. You've brought in all the data and you've done your analysis on what the proper thing is to do. And maybe this falls more into the CMA category, it sounds like now. And you have to make those decisions, but now you have to make those decisions and communicate them to people who don't understand the numbers to the extent that you do. What would be your advice to somebody that, let's say, just got into their career and they're in a position now where they've done the analysis, but they got to go and talk to, let's say, even the marketer, right? So I can see from the data that we need to shift as a company into this different audience we're talking to. How do you, as somebody who knows this information because the data shows it, come talk to me, somebody who doesn't understand any of that piece of it, but I can help make sure it happens?
Well, that's a great segue, Jay, because that's why I'm here as a faculty member at Walsh College. That, to some degree, whatever proclivity I have towards teaching was developed during my time in industry, because you're absolutely right. It's hard for people to realize this sometimes, but if you're in accounting, you're actually a salesperson too. And here's why. You aren't selling insurance, you aren't selling a product, but you are selling ideas. And so one of the things that is really critical, and this is where I think that if you can have faculty that bring war stories and actual experience to the classroom, that's beneficial. But you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it effectively with other people, it could be dead on arrival. And this is where hopefully you get good mentoring over the course of your career and education, because you can have the right idea, but if you don't lay it out and teach your audience as to why your idea makes sense. And that it's not just selling your idea, but it's also looking at, okay, here's some logical alternatives that people may be thinking about. These are why these alternatives are not the optimal way to go. And you have to be able to effectively sell that. And this is the critical thinking part. It's a talent that is not a given out in the marketplace right now. So if you can get a good education, if you can get some good mentoring, that's the gateway to being very valuable, value add to your employer, because if you can do these things right.
That's yeah. And it is. And I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. I think that if you are the person that holds the information, it is also on you to make sure everybody else understands why a direction is being turned.
Yes.
And that's a really interesting way for you to put that. And I do think it's important to point out, like, that is why the war stories have to exist in the classroom, because you have to go beyond what does this definition mean? Great. I may understand exactly what that definition means, but if I can't go into work and say, now I'm going to put this thing into practice, then it's pointless. I don't need to know that thing.
No, I'll tell the story. This goes back, maybe go back 10 years ago, but I did have in the undergraduate program here, we have a common finance course. So you can't escape Walsh College without taking a finance course. But I had a student. She was a great student. She was a marketing major, and she ended up going into marketing. But I actually tried to talk her into going into finance. And my argument was this: I lost it. So maybe I'm not as effective a communicator.
Look, us marketers have the most fun. That's you can't compete with that.
But my point to her was, you're really good at numbers, and you are a marketer. You're a marketing person. That was clear as day. My pitch to her at the time was, you have no clue as to how many people, how small the population is there is of people who can really market well and are comfortable with numbers. If you can do both, I know you can have a great career in marketing too, but I would argue you can have a great career in accounting and finance as well. Yeah, we had last week we interviewed one of our alumni, and that video will be coming out here soon because it was a really fascinating one. And he did that. He has a CPA, and he was talking about, but he is the most charismatic person I think I've ever met. And He was talking about how he grew up in sports, and he went to college for baseball, and that's what he did. And he joked then, he's like, look, I'm not your standard accountant person. My personality is not that, but because of this personality, I have gotten opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And it sounds like it's exactly what you're talking about. Absolutely. In fact, the accounting profession needs more people who are comfortable in a crowded room and comfortable educating people about things. And again, but this is the great opportunity because technology now does all that, for lack of a better word, all that grunt work for us. That's why these skills are ever more important today. And actually, I think accounting is a more rewarding career today than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
That's an interesting perspective. I think that this kind of goes back. I know we've called this out a couple of times now, but this kind of goes back to the idea that the perception of accounting is different than the reality of accounting. Because yes. I think a lot of people would go by what historically has been known as accounting of like, I'm going to go sit in this room, I'm going to punch in some numbers on a calculator and it'll be done. But what we're talking about today is that's not the case. That's if you are somebody that has that personality, that an accounting career very much is what you make it. Yeah. And if you come in with that personality where you're like, I want to be the face of this, you're the face of it, because and the competition is pretty low at that point if you're also that person. That's really an interesting one. One more thing I want to touch on before we dive into our last section here is let's talk about some salary ranges. Because it sounds like, these people, hopefully in accounting and in finance, are people that are being seen and treated with the skill set that they have, because it is vastly important for a company to have these people in place in order to be able to do anything with money. So let's talk about what is the salary range when we look at a CPA, and then what is the salary range when we look at a CMA?
Well, CPAs will typically make more money than CMAs. Early career, public accounting firms right now are paying pretty good money. They're paying, towards the upper five figures to hire people. If you become a CFO for a reasonably well-sized company, you're going to make some very good money. You're going to be making, depending on the size of the company and the responsibilities, you'll be making six figures somewhere. But for the large companies, if you get into the really big companies, you could be making seven figures. So definitely great career opportunities. CMAs, I just had a former graduate here take a job, and it was very high fives, low six-figure salary that they've been in their career for 5-6 years.
Yeah, so still early.
So these you can make a career out of it and live very, very comfortably.
Yeah. And what's the so let's go talk about the CMA side. Mm-hmm. Same thing roughly? Well,
so CMAs can become controllers, can become chief financial officers. So yeah, that gateway is open as well. The executive roles in accounting and finance, there's more CPAs than CMAs, but there are CMAs there as well. And I think when you talk about career path, and I think this is especially important in today's world. It's okay. How much money can I make and live comfortably? I'll check the box. In this profession, you can make good money. In fact, the salaries are rising fairly quickly because of the shortage of good talent. So that's issue one. But issue two is quality of life. And this is part of the horror stories of accounting, because in public accounting, when I first got involved, you'd be working 80, 90-hour work weeks. That's not the case anymore. I think the profession has come to the realization you can't work people that hard and expect them to stay.
Right. You can't burn the candle at both ends, and then a little in the middle too.
Exactly. So I think that you can make good money, but you can also have a good work-life balance in the fields today. Do you get busy around the year-end reports and tax season? Yes. Right. But I know an awful lot of accountants who've been in the profession for a long time who have really good golf games.
And great vacation homes.
Great vacation homes, and including a boat that they use in the fall. So, if you're looking for that work-life balance, if you're looking for a profession that demands critical skills, but also all the soft skills as well, and you have an aptitude towards quantitative things, it's treated me well. I can only recommend it to others.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about my favorite part of this. Why Walsh? Why should somebody who's looking to be either a CPA or a CMA, why Walsh? What makes Walsh different than the next guy?
So this is the interesting story. I'll give a personal story and then I'll give the pitch.
Love it.
So my personal story, I talked about my progression through public accounting. I became a CFO at age 31. And back then, the requirements were for the exam. I'd taken only 6 undergraduate credit hours in finance. So all of a sudden, I'm working for this company that's pretty large. I can account all day long. I was short in finance. And, my undergrad was from the University of Notre Dame, okay school.
Right.
I'd come through and I had my CPA, but somebody tapped me on the shoulder. So I'm 31. It's like, I better bone up on finance. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, you want to check out Walsh College. With all due respect to the University of Notre Dame, with all due respect to Wayne State University, where I got my doctorate, the most valuable degree I got in my entire career was the master's degree in finance that I got at Walsh College, because the faculty had real life experience. And so I was in a new role. I had to learn new things very fast, and I had to know, I was in a position of responsibility, so I had to know what could possibly go wrong. Before I experienced it, I wanted to know about it. And the faculty, to a person, were able to really step up my game, because they taught the theory, but they also taught the actual practice of business. And that's a tradition that was at Walsh a long time ago. It's the tradition that still is alive and well today at Walsh. And I talk about finance, but we actually made our name on accounting. Mervyn Walsh. We have a long and storied tradition in the accounting space. And
founded by Thomas Edison's accountant.
Yes.
I love it.
So I think that what I experienced many years ago here at Walsh College is the same thing that goes on today. I see it from the other side of the table. But again, every faculty member in that classroom understands the technical side of the trade very, very well. They're highly qualified. But more importantly, they bring the real world to the classroom. And I think that's invaluable experience today that higher education, for the most part, misses out on. And so if you really want to know how to do it right, I'd come to Walsh College.
I like it. And I think that, that rings true in a lot of, in really all of our degree programs. Yeah. To your point, the faculty are coming in with real world experience. It makes a world of difference when we can actually sit down in a classroom and know that time I'm spending that night learning whatever that lecture or that conversation is, because it's hard to even call them lectures. And I think that that's the part that comes in, is it's not traditional lecture. It's conversation about what does this mean.
Here's how I describe Walsh faculty to people that I talk to: book smart and street smart, and that's a unique characteristic.
Yeah, it has been interesting to me to do more of these interviews, and I sit down with a lot of our alumni, and we have a lot of these conversations. And the thing that continues to come up is, I loved that our faculty told me to close the book because we're going to talk about what it's actually like. And every time they do it, I'm like, it's almost like I gave them a script, and I'm like, here you go. But it's because they genuinely feel the strength of the education that they received here and during their time here. Yeah. And so from all of us that have gone through your classes in the past, and now I get to sit here and actually interview you, and I get to be faculty here on my own. Thank you, because you have been here at Walsh for a long time, and you've had that same mentality through it all of, we're not just preparing you to pass that exam. We're preparing you for your career and to make sure that you are doing everything that you can do to be the best version of yourself.
Walsh College has been around for over 100 years now, and I think that's the one. We talk about continuity and change. Technology is changing. The continuity of the Walsh approach to teaching has remained the same for a long period of time, and I think it's a valuable element for all of our graduates to be part of that educational experience.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you, John. Not only just for all of your teaching, but everything that you do here at Walsh, and then also sitting here with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.